Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus, and yeah, today I'm walking you through a couple of rounds of Café del Gatto. This is the German version of the game, but the game is very much language independent. Only the rules right now are in German, but I'm relatively certain some clever folks already have found a translation of those rules. The game has been kindly provided to me as a review copy by Schmidt Spiele, so thanks so much for that. And I already mentioned it during my playthrough of World of Warcraft, the board game. That the next video might be a lighter one. That's definitely what this game is. A very family-friendly game, and I think it plays the more the merrier. So with two, I found it a little bit bland. As of 3 or 4 players, it's great. With 5 players, of course, as well. Which is why I'm doing you a walkthrough of a 3-player game today. I'm relatively certain I will not be doing a full playthrough here. I will walk you through a couple of rounds, basically to give you an idea what this game is all about. And yes, if you guessed it, this game is basically creating coffee. The components are really very nice in this one, because the players are trying to fill up their different coffee cups here. So we have the espresso, that should be a doppio, thin cappuccino, cafe au lait and latte macchiato. And you see the different colored spots here. So basically you have milk and you have coffee that you need to place in there. And the main engine of this game is around those heavy duty either milk or coffee tokens. They're double-sided, and depending for what you're filling up, you're placing them on the respective side. They have values on them, and yes, again, they're really so nicely done, so thick, so heavy. Yeah, pretty much very much comparable to games like Azul, for example. But again, we have values on this, so this is kind of the buying price for those different tokens here. Some of those do have a sugar symbol next to them, so whenever you're getting one, but I will come to that, you're also getting one of those sugar cubes here. And they have 3 different kind of symbols here, which is kind of, not really set collection, but yeah, you're trying to put together a set of matching icons here in order to maximize the money that you are getting from. Whenever you are filling up one of your coffee cups, you can then basically deliver it with your next action, and depending on how much value cubes you have put on, you're allowed to take one of those scoring tokens here. Again, so nicely done here. And yeah, the game pretty much ends when one of the players have delivered their final cup of coffee here, and then you're pretty much completing the end of the round, and then you are tallying up your score. So the game is really very much around timing of things. Yeah, but again, I will come to all of those mechanics when we start playing, which should be pretty much now. The game is really super simple. Setup is relatively quickly done. The only little cumbersome aspect are those different scoring tokens here. You will always have basically the lowest scoring tile for each of the players. So every player that is playing will be able to score 1 point for an espresso here, for example, or 2 points here for a cappuccino. Obviously, you're trying to get more points. Money at the end of the game is not really worth anything. It's simply a tiebreaker. So not nothing, but definitely not as important as really scoring those, more precious coffees. I don't know, maybe they have gold flakes in there or no. Also, I don't really know. Okay then, let's get started. The starting player starts with 1 less of these coins here, so only with 4, or the other players will start with full 5 coins. The starting player doesn't change throughout the game. But again, if, for example, the second player completes the game, then the first player doesn't get a turn after that. So that's really the important piece around this timing. During your turn, you basically have 3 options. You can either simply, let's call it, pass, and when you pass, you will simply collect 2 of these coins. Usually not the most interesting thing to do, but sometimes that's all that you can do. The second, way more often thing that you are doing is to gather either a milk or a coffee cube for the respective pricing. I will come to that in a minute as well. And last but not least, you can deliver 1 or more of your completed coffee cups here, like this one here. So this one really requires 1 coffee at the bottom and 2 milk on top of those, and depending on the values you will then score victory points. That's the number, and based on the symbols here you will then also collect some income, which is then also important to get you more of those milk or coffee tiles. So these are basically the 3 actions that you can take, and again you can deliver more than 1 coffee, which sometimes really is not a bad thing. So action economy is pretty important in this game. But I think for the first turn of the starting player here, we are going for our first, I guess, milk tile here. Normally I would prefer going with the coffee tile, but looking at the current display here, that's something which doesn't make necessarily too much of a sense. And I should also mention you can always spend 2 coins in order to wipe out one of these one pillar here basically, and refresh it with new ones here. Something that you're also not doing very often, because you also sometimes leave stuff for the other players, of course. But I think in this case, let's not worry about this too much. So we are going to, I guess, going for this milk tile here. The price is not the 4 on here, it's basically the number that's on the opposite row. So in order to buy this one, you have to spend 2 money. Similarly here, for this one you have to spend 4, and the other way around here as well. Here it's 1 for 1. Here in theory, for this coffee tile it would be 1, but here's a +1. So if you're going for this one, we would have to spend 2 money in order to get for this one. And for this 4 here, you would have to spend 5, which is really an insane amount of money. So I think in this case, it's relatively simple. We are spending the 2 here in order to grab ourselves this tile, and yeah, this mechanic really works very, very nicely. So this money goes back to the bank, and we have immediately to fill the milk into our cups, or rather in one of our cups. And similarly with normal coffee spilling or filling, you have to start from the bottom of the cup here. I have milk, and basically none of my coffees wants milk other than the latte macchiato. So that's what we have to go for here. But it's a 4, it's the highest tile out there. Maybe I should have mentioned that. So those tile range from 1 to 4. So in this case, we are pulling it, it goes all the way to the bottom, and that's basically the end of our action. And the last thing to do is to refill from this massive bag of additional cubes here. Again, it's the milk side. We are placing in the milk side. And by the way, there are 3 different symbols. So we have cold, we have hot, and then this I think is creamy or so. And again, the symbols are not really important for scoring your points, but it's really important to get you some extra coins. Again, you need those coins later on to buy more of those cubes here, obviously. But that's already the turn of the first player. We are moving over here, and again, they have all the same coffee cups here, but all the other players will start with 5 coins instead. And one piece, which is also, I would think, kind of important in this game, is to consider what kind of an offering you leave behind for the players who are following you. So in this case, the first player got a 4 tile for 2, which is not bad, but by doing so, he decreased the pricing of this tile here accordingly. So this is now pretty insane, actually. So I guess for the second player, it's pretty obvious. We will go for this coffee tile here. So we are spending 1 coin here. Again, this price defines this tile here. We are going for this. We have to immediately place it. And here the second player really does have some choices. We could already filling up our espresso here. That's a 4. It's definitely not bad. We could score 4 points for that. You might wonder yourself, how do you get to 5 or 6 points for an espresso? This is how these sugar cubes come into the picture. So for every sugar you're adding to your coffee, you're getting basically an extra, not victory point, it's basically a victory point. You increase the value of your coffee. But we could also say, no, I think we are going for our cappuccino. And I think that's what we are going to do. We are still okay on money, so we are not in a rush to get some early points from this espresso here. We could also go for this doppio, but I think for now, for whatever reason, I decide to fill up my cappuccino here. I think it's a cappuccino. Yeah, I think it's a cappuccino. And again, that's basically the end of the round. We are replacing a new tile, so we are adding this tile in here. And what I just told you earlier on, to really consider what you are leaving behind for the other players, what kind of offering. This could be a perfect situation to say, no, I'm not buying a tile, I'm maybe delivering something, even though I wasn't really fancying delivering so, because sometimes you really do want to deliver 2 coffees at the same time. Again, action economy. What you could also say, no, let's rather stall and let's simply go for 2 money instead, before I'm giving someone else a much better offering here. But anyway, it's the third player's turn. They also have 5 money. And yeah, what do we have here? It's really not extremely sexy, quite honestly. So the 2 for 4 isn't bad, but then we are kind of following the same logic as the first player. That's not bad. I mean, filling up these high ranking tiles, and again 4 is the highest number in here, on your latte macchiato, which will then really score you an awful lot of points. Still, the latte macchiato also takes the longest, because you have to place in 4 of these cubes before you're allowed to deliver it. So this will definitely take you some time. Anyway, I do think, that's the problem. For a second, I was going for the third player to go for this 3 here for 1, which is good. The problem is, we already see that we are setting up the first player then to grab this tile here instead, because this will drive down, so he will get a valuable 4 coffee for only a 1. So setting up someone for success here. So maybe we should go for this one. I think so. I think we have to, because we don't want to make the lives of the other players too easy in this case. So yeah, we are grabbing this, and again, right now, third player doesn't have any choice here. We have to put it into our latte cup. So let's draw another tile, and in this case, it's only a measly 1. The 1s are still okay, because they give you a sugar whenever you're getting a 1. And again, sometimes the sugar is really very valuable to bring you to a point where you get the points here, which you want to score. I will explain those things in a second, I guess. When we get there, it might still take us a couple of more turns. But that was the full first round of the game. Let's clean up here as well. We are moving back to the first player, who's currently down to 2 money, and the current offering isn't particularly great. So we might want to stall, but all the other players may want to stall as well. That's now a thing, actually. So no, I still think first player is going to stall, so we are passing, which gives us simply 2 coins here. So we are back at 4, which we might need, but that's already the end of our turn. We are not automatically refilling or so. It's simply that we have decided not to take a tile or deliver anything. Back to the second player, and I think, oh no, that's a bummer. For a second, I was going for this tile here. The problem is, this is a creamy symbol, but our current cappuccino here is already filled with, let's say, a hot piece of coffee. So we don't want to make it too creamy. We can do that, that's allowed, but we are missing out on some of the money bonuses we are getting there. Anyway, we don't have to fill up our glasses, so we could directly go for this one, next one, this one. So there is no obligation whatsoever to fill a coffee. I'm not sure if that really makes sense thematically, but I guess mechanically it makes sense. Okay, what is the second player going to do with that? We could go for this one here. This gives me, I think I really want either this or that. That's the point. And the 7 is pretty good, and we do have the money. Let's do that. It's definitely expensive, but we are going to spend 3 to grab ourselves this one again. That's the price for this one here. So we have to spend 3 money, and in this case we will place it here. Again, we could place it into our latte macchiato, but I think we do want to fill our cappuccino here. It's filled, we can leave it here as long as we see fit. So we could, for example, decide first we want to also fill up the espresso and then deliver both of them in one single action. That's basically up to the second player, but it's the end of the turn for we cannot automatically deliver that coffee. That's really an action. Let's clean up. Let's also reveal a new stone, and they're both the same on both of the sides. So whatever it is for milk, it's also the same for coffee. Wow, we have a lot of ones out here. And honestly, I don't have any idea about the distribution of things. Are there more ones than there are fours, for example? I have really no clue. But then we are moving over to the third player. What do we see? I mean, this one here isn't terrible. It doesn't cost us 1, it would cost us 2, basically the plus 1 here, but that's also not nothing actually. So for 2 getting a 4, that's still worth it, I think. Yeah, let's do that. We are going to spend the 2, we are going to grab this one, and I guess for now we are going to place it. That's an interesting one actually. We could also place it into our debut here. Maybe let's try that. Let's try that. Let's quickly refill. Wow, more ones out here. So sooner or later we really do want to refresh one of those columns here. Oh, that's really insane. But then we are moving back to the first player who has some more money now on their hands. But the choices aren't really great. 2 for 3 is, I think, okay-ish, but also not necessarily great. But I do think, do we want to go for this one to grab ourselves one of those sugar cubes? Again, I'm not necessarily playing the best game of my life here. I have to really think this through for 3 players, which isn't easy, even in a simple game like this one here. So I'm basically playing against myself. So yeah, let's at least try that. So we are spending 1 in order to grab this. Because it's a 1, we automatically get 1 sugar cube with that. 2 sugar cubes at the end of the game that you haven't used are still worth a point, but usually really try to transform them into direct victory points. So we place the sugar in here, and the milk goes into our next latte, into the next stage of our latte macchiato. So the next tile that the first player is taking has to be a coffee tile here, because all the lowest one are currently coffee. The other players know that as well, of course. Let's refill anyway, and for once it's not a 1, it's a 2. Still not great, but all the more reason for the second player to not grab a tile. On the other hand, this one isn't terrible actually. 1 for 3 is okay, but I guess it could be better actually. So we could deliver something. We could deliver our cappuccino here. On the other hand, again, and that's very important in, let's say, somewhat more advanced strategies or tactics in this game, to have a look what your opponents need. And the second player clearly sees that the third player needs basically this creamy symbol here, and that's another coffee one. And by looking at the current display, we see that you get a creamy one as 2 for only a 1. So I guess grabbing this away may be the better choice for the second player. So I will play a little bit more competitively against myself again. But yeah, let me show you some of the intricacies of this relatively simple game otherwise. So we are spending the 1 to grab this one here. Yeah, let's do that. And I believe as we are going to deliver our coffees relatively soon, let's fill up our espresso here. So with the next action, the second player could deliver both of those coffees here. Nice. Let's fill up the display, which I guess is supposed to be a coffee machine. Let's spend this one, and then yeah, we are moving over to the third player, who is a little bit, just a little bit annoyed by this selection. So looking at the current display, we are basically, third player is down to 1 coin. There is a lot of stuff which we could get for 1 coin, so don't get me wrong. So we could go for this 3 here, which isn't terrible either, and as long as it's out, I do think it might be actually worth it. Yeah, let's spend the 1 in order to go for this coffee tile here. Again, we could place it here to fill up our coffee, but these are 2 different kind of symbols, which will then reduce the money reward we are getting. So we ideally want similar symbols in our coffee. So we could go also for an espresso, but the 3 is a tricky one because the scoring tiles for espresso doesn't show a 3. So we have 1s, we have 2s, and then we have a 4. So in order to increase a 3 to a 4, we would need to spend sugar cubes. And of course, if you can overpay, that's fine. You will then go for the next lowest scoring tile. That is still available. So if someone is taking this, it's gone. And we're not completely losing it. That's a good piece. You also get basically the difference in money back. So that's usually also not a bad thing, giving you some money. The problem is, and this is also where you have to check the coffees of the other players. Third player sees that the espresso of the second player is already completed and he will go before the third player, and losing 2 victory points out of this, so basically going from a 3 down to a 1 for an espresso, is not nice. Yes, you still get the money, which could still be important enough, but I do think we can do other stuff with this one. So do we want to put it into our cappuccino, or do we want to start filling up our cafe au lait, which is still okay. A 3 on a cafe au lait, as basically the foundation isn't terrible. Yeah, let's do that. Let's clean up a little bit. Let's replenish, and that's another 3. Okay, and then we are moving back to the first player who still has some money. We have a sugar cube and our cafe au lait. No, latte macchiato. What am I talking about? The latte macchiato is halfway filled, which isn't terrible. And again, we want the creamy stuff here. The problem is, coffee wise, the only creamy symbol here, the heart-shaped one, is all the way on top. So we have to spend 4 for a 3, which isn't great. If that would be the last tile of the cafe latte macchiato and it would really give me a lot of money, then I may want to consider this. In this case, I'm not so sure. Problem is 1 for 1. Getting this one here isn't terrible for another sugar cube. Maybe that's what we are going to do actually. So we are spending another 1. So we are paying this price to get this tile here. We have to go for a coffee tile. Let's do that. And I think in this case we are going to be humble, placing it here. Let's not forget our sugar. So we are basically at 2 sugar. Again, 2 sugar could be 1 victory point at the end of the game, but let's try to spend them more wisely. Let's replenish, and that's really a very, very nice offering. I mean, you really want basically the 1s on one side and the high numbers on the other side. The problem is the second player doesn't have any money left, but we have 2 coffees which we could deliver. And before we are now basically passing and grabbing ourselves 2 coins, we might as well deliver our coffee here. So we are basically delivering both of those. So there's really no reason to hold back, quite honestly. Let's start with the easy one here. So this espresso here is currently worth 2 points. We have a 2 here. Nice, we will grab it. So we will place it here. So this coffee is completed. We will never be able to fill this up here again. But we are also getting some payment for our coffee, and this is where we are checking out this little symbol here. On these 1 tiles, basically on the espresso, doesn't really matter too much which symbol it is, because when we check out our little scoring sheet here, the only coin value we'll get for espresso is a 1. And this number here is showing us the amount of different symbols that you have. So if you only have 1 type of symbol in a cup of latte macchiato, your bonus money for this, other than the victory points, is 7, which is quite huge, of course. So let's get 1 coin for the second player here. This tile basically goes back. It will get shuffled back into the bag when we are running out of those. But of course we are not done yet. We still have our cappuccino here, which is worth 7 points, which happens to be the second highest scoring tile for cappuccino out there. So let's totally grab this one. So it's gone. So again, no one can go for the 2 for the espresso, and no one can go for the 7 for the cappuccino. So let's place it here accordingly. These were 2 tiles with 1 symbol. And again, if we check our second row, so that's the same for the doppio and the cappuccino here, we only had 1, basically not 2 different tiles. We are getting 3 more coins for that. So that's not bad. So in total, we are going into the next round with 4 money, which isn't terrible. Those tiles go back, they might come back, and that's basically the end of the second player's turn. Nicely done. For the third player, it might be some kind of a lulled turn. We are simply passing and taking ourselves, what is this, 2 money for this. We have some preparations for coffees, but we are not quite there yet. But that's pretty much the end of the round. Moving back to the first player and looking at the display here, we may actually want to spend 2 money to grab this tile here, which would go perfectly together with our latte macchiato. So maybe let's do that. So we are spending 2. Again, it's a +1 here for this tile. So let's take it. Let's immediately refill. We already know where we are placing it. We are replacing it with another creamy 2, which is good for the third player, maybe. But of course, we still have to place the tile here. So in this case, we are placing it here. It needs to be coffee now. So they're all the same for now, which is pretty good. So if we're really managing to also put a creamy tile on top of this, we would set up ourselves for 7 money, or even with 2, that's still 4 money, which isn't terrible. Over to the second player who's just delivered stuff. So they have to start pretty much from scratch for all of these coffees, but we are also at 4 money here. Is there something that we do want? And maybe there is. The 4 here isn't terrible for 1. So let's spend that money to grab this. And I believe we're going to place it here. You don't want to end up in a situation where you are not able to deliver all of your coffees at the end of the game. If that happens to happen, and typically it does happen, someone is storming towards the end of the game, you don't want it to be one of those bigger ones. It's okay to miss out maybe on an espresso or the doppio or the cappuccino if you really manage to do exceptionally well on those 2. So if you're going to maximum score here, for example, and a good score here, then you are still in an okay shape to miss out on 1 coffee. But if you're really missing out on one of those 2, that could be pretty bad. Anyway, let's refill. So let's place some more coffee in here, and then we are moving over to the third player. And for the third player, this one is indeed rather tasty. So we have to spend 2 money, again 1 + 1, to grab this one, but I still think it's worth it, because not only are we filling up our doppio here, and this could give us 6 points, and I'm relatively certain we will get those 6 points. No, it's only 2 matching symbols, which would give us 3 more coins once we deliver this doppio here. But again, that's the end of the round. Let's refill, and maybe let's do one final round for this walkthrough here. Again, we are moving back to the first player. First player could deliver his espresso here, but I don't feel like it actually, because that's only 1 coin, and if we pass we would gain 2 coins, and ideally you want to deliver the espresso with something else, just as a topping, basically as an icing for something else. So I guess for the first player we are pretty much passing. Over to the second player, who again has, that's the perfect offering here. So we are spending this, we are grabbing that. So yes, you really see that you have to pay attention about the offering, making sure that you don't allow the other players to gain too much of the good stuff. But the second player was really extremely lucky, and that's also, I think, the main reason why it's more fun playing 3, 4, 5 players here, because simply the offering will change way more. With 2 players it's kind of a dual situation. Sometimes a lot of these things are stalling. Doesn't really work that well, at least not for me. You can play it, it's not broken in any way or so, but it's simply a little bit more fun with more players, that is. Let's not forget to refill here. Okay, I don't want to spend 5 for a 4 here, even though that's a perfect tile for the second player. As the third player is basically down to 0 cash, I think we are going to deliver this one here. So that's 6 victory points. Again, it's the second highest tile for the doppio, so that's not nothing. So let's place those victory points in here, because it's pretty much the matching symbol on a doppio. We are collecting 3 more coins for this. Nicely done. Back to the first player. Yeah, I think I upset I'm going to end it, but maybe let's keep going for now. At least one more round. Let's see how things go. We still don't want to deliver our espresso. Again, our espresso goes together with something else. There's nothing really out there which would help me. Yes, indeed, we could go for any symbol here, but I don't think that we want another one in our latte macchiato, and the 2 is also not really worth it, and the 4 for 5 is pretty much out of the question. So that's the problem. We could still go, I mean, a 3 here isn't terrible, and I think, yeah, we would still leave a 3 down there, but it's still okay, I guess. I think it's still okay. So we're spending the 1 to grab ourselves this one here, and looking at the display, I think we want to place the snowflake symbol here onto our cappuccino. Let's do that. Let's replenish, and oh, that's really, the game is teasing us here. This 4 would be amazing, truly amazing for the second player. The problem is it costs us currently 1 plus 2, 3 money, and the second player is down to 2 money. And no, there are no such things as loans here. It's not a Martin Wallace game. So that's now a very mean thing. We could still pay 1 to grab ourselves this one here, and we could place it into our doppio. It's not terrible. There is still 1 more here, so we could kind of gamble, and I think that's what the second player is going to do. So we are spending the 1 to grab this one here for now. Yeah, let's do that. And again, we are going to place this onto our doppio. Let's refill accordingly, and then we are moving back to the third player who has some cash in hand, and I guess he wants to mess with the second player here. So we are spending 1 coin to grab this one here, because that's basically the one the second player has gambled upon. Does this make sense actually? Why not? I think second player is doing too well already, so let's play it a little bit mean for now, and I guess for now we will simply place it here onto our espresso. Then we are refilling and moving back to the first player. The first player definitely does need... Do we want to gamble now actually? I think it's not the greatest thing in the world, but I still think it could work. And again, I want to show you as much as possible in this game. So we need milk, right, for the latte. So we are spending the 1 here to grab ourselves this one here. We're getting 1 sugar with it. So let's place the sugar in here, and let's place the latte macchiato in here, which is now filled. It's not an awful lot of points, but I still do think we can get stuff with it. And the most important piece is we will most likely not going to worry about money in the game as much anymore, because we will get 7 coins for this latte macchiato, which is huge. So let's refill. Moving back to the second player. Is there something that the second player really wants to have? This one up here would be nice, but we don't have the full money for that. We could go for this one, which is a 3, which isn't terrible. The problem, or there are 2 problems with that. First of all, the 6 is already gone. So if I would place in this one here, we would go down to a 5. We would still get the money, or the difference in money, which is good. The second problem is this would be 2 different symbols. Again, this would be a hot and the creamy hard one. These are 2 different symbols, and when you look at this, you will only get 1 point, 1 money for that. So in total, we would get 2 money out of this and 5 victory points, which again isn't too terrible. So I think in this case there is still another option, this one here of course, and I didn't really think that through. No, that's perfect actually. We are spending the 1 to grab ourselves this one, which we are placing in here, which is then in total a 9. But of course ultimately we want the 10 here of course, so we would either need a sugar, or we would go down to an 8, which would give us another money, which again also might not be the worst thing to have. Yeah, let's think this through. But anyway, we have to refill first. So what do we get? Another 4. Nice. And then, yeah, we are moving back to the third player. Indeed, who has 2 monies. And looking at the current coffee cups here, we may want to, we could go for this one here. There is another one. So yeah, let's do that. So we're spending the 1 to grab ourselves this one here, which we're going to place into our cappuccino, and that's his turn done. Let's quickly refill, and I think then we are more or less calling it. Let's do the final action for this walkthrough of the first player, because I think I can show you pretty much the last thing of the game, and that's how we are using sugar here. So in total we have 9 points on our latte macchiato. We are going to deliver. Looking at the victory point tiles for the latte macchiato, there is no 9. I think the next highest one might be the 11 here, and I think that's the one that we are trying to complete. So let's see, again, that's 5, 8, 9 plus 2 sugar, so that's the 11 we need for this tile. Nicely done, because these were all the same, and that was the main reason we are collecting 7 coins for that, and that's really, really nice. But that's not all. We have also delivered our espresso here, which is simply 1 victory point. I still take it and still gives us 1 extra coin. So we have 8 money now, which we can use, and we have delivered 2 coffees at the same kind, and 11 isn't terrible. Yes, the next 14 or 16, that's usually the winning score, but sometimes really try to do, let's call it a speed run through this game, and in theory you can win this way, but then you have to be somewhat lucky. Let's put it like this. But getting the money out, or the maximum money out of your latte macchiato, is definitely not a bad strategy in this game. But yeah, that's basically the turn of the first player, and I think you have really seen it all by now. So I guess I'm ending my little walkthrough of Café del Gatto here. I really do hope you enjoyed it. I hope I was able to show you basically how this game works, some of the intricacies of this game. It's not really a very, very mean game. It's, of course, you're taking stuff away from other players, and yes, there is definitely good competition for those scoring tiles here. So again, a lot of these higher ones are already gone, so the other players now have to adapt. Is it really still worth for me getting for, let's say, the minimum amount of points, or will I go for now maximum amount of points for my latte here? The second player will now be able to complete his Café au lait here for 9 points, which isn't great. So we could go for the 8 and getting 1 more money here, for example, or we could simply say no, let's wait another round and let's go for a sugar cube. Problem is we are out of money, so we are most likely not going to pass simply to grab ourselves a 1 here, because again, timing is everything. You want to pass as little as possible, because you're really running out of other valuable action. Money isn't really worth a lot at the end of the game, only a tiebreaker, that is. And yeah, that's basically how you play Café del Gatto. Before I forget, huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members out there. You guys are truly amazing. The next video might be another more heavy one. Actually, I already left some screenshots and basically a question on my YouTube channel, and to be honest, so far the responses are promising, so I think you really want to see that other game, and I'm definitely looking forward to this one too. So stay tuned for my next playthrough series. And yeah, with that being said, hope to see you soon in one of my other videos, and yeah, until then, bye bye.